Hi, I'm Marcy Stay Stringham, and I dated Scott in my junior and senior year of high school, and I was asked to tell a couple of stories about him for his bachelor party. So I thought I'd begin by telling about what a gentleman he is. When we first met, it was in Spanish class, and I had a huge crush on Scott, and I used to leave little notes around on his desk so that he would find them in the next period. And so one day I thought maybe I'd ask him if we could hang out a little bit more than just passing by in Spanish class. And being the gentleman that he was, he said no. And he told me he was dating another girl, and you know, when Scott makes up his mind, he makes up his mind. So I was devastated and went away to mope on my own. And 3 weeks later, Scott showed up and said, I think I was wrong. Maybe I do want to date you. So we started hanging out together, and one of our first dates was to the prom. And I was wearing this beautiful white lace dress with long sleeves, and I had my hair back with baby's breath in it. And we went out, and Scott, bless his heart, is nothing if not honest. And about halfway through our date, he said, you know, I'm kind of glad you wore that dress. It's really different than everyone else's, and I was really surprised when I first saw you, but it's growing on me. And so I looked around and noticed that all the other girls were wearing strapless or dark black and red or had their hair up, and realized I did look a little different than everybody else that was there. So that was really exciting for me to spend the rest of my date wondering how I looked compared to everybody else. Now, one of the problems with hanging out with Scott is he had a group of friends that he called the Pagans. They were a little pesky because every time I wanted to spend time with Scott, they'd call up and say, hey, we're going out in the desert, come with us. And off he would run. Well, on one of these outings that he had with the boys, he came back and I said, so what do you do when you're out with the Pagans? And Scott showed me a picture of him jumping over a fire with his legs spread eagle in the splits, wearing nothing but underwear. And then he told me about how they had filled his hair with shortening and then made all kinds of different looks on him, and it took him 5 shampooings to get all the shortening out. Now, I have to comment on Scott's hair. He has the most beautiful, brown, thick shock of hair that I have ever seen, and I am sure that his new wife will spend many hours running her fingers through it, loving his thick mane. One of the things that Scott also told me about was when we went to the big rock where he liked to go camping with his buddies. And we stood on top of it, and he told me about how late at night on their camping trips, sometimes they would pee off the top of the rock. Well, unfortunately, there was once some campers that were underneath the rock. They had a bit of a surprise when Scott and his friends were up on top. I want to say that Scott is a tremendous young man. He took me on my first motorcycle ride to the graffiti rock, and he took me all over the place to all these fun, neat things like going to Catholic Mass just to see what it was like. And one time I was having a bit of a nervous breakdown, and he was at college and he was studying for a big chemistry test, and he came running up and gave me a hymn book that he had written a nice note in, just to tell me how much he cared about me and that he hoped everything was okay. So I wish you the best of luck, Scott. You have a very lucky fiance, and I hope everything goes well.